Ever feel like you've been kicked out of your own life, tossed out like trash? Yeah, I have. It happened the day my husband brought his side chick into our home, right in front of me and our 3-month-old son. 5 years ago, I married Jason Carter, a guy I thought was solid, dependable, the kind of man who could hold it all together. I was an orphan, no family, no safety net. I'll admit it, I fell for the confidence he pretended to have, the way he seemed so sure of every decision. Back then, I was working the front desk at a dental clinic, saving every penny I could in hopes of building a family, something real, something stable. But Jason wasn't who I thought he was. Over those 5 years, it was like he slowly peeled off his mask. At first, he was just bossy. Then the cynicism crept in, the sharp remarks. He never yelled without a reason, mostly because he made sure to create those reasons himself. He'd pick at me over burnt toast, or because I bought the wrong brand of diapers, and he'd do it with this smug little smirk like he enjoyed watching me shrink a little more with every word. The only warmth that ever existed in that house came from his mom, Margaret Carter. Mags. I honestly don't even know how to explain how much I grew attached to her. She didn't just treat me like a daughter, she became the mom I never had. We'd bake pies together, flip through old family photo albums while she shared stories from her childhood. And sometimes when it was just us, she'd quietly say, "Tiffany, he's just like his father." And trust me, that's not a compliment. I know exactly what he's capable of. She wasn't complaining, she was warning me. When I got pregnant, everything got worse. Jason was more distant, more irritable than ever. Ultrasounds, doctor appointments, feeling the baby kick. He couldn't have cared less. According to him, he was doing his part, bringing home the paycheck, so he deserved his rest. Then he pushed to buy a new apartment, mortgage, under my name. Down payment, partly from my savings, the money I'd been putting away long before we even got married. I resisted. He pushed harder. I caved. After we moved, he declared his mom was too intrusive and said it was time for us to live like real adults. He stopped visiting her altogether, left her alone in that house she'd spent her life paying off. I felt like I was sinking. Everything in my life was tied to him. No voice of my own, no space of my own. I'd lost myself somewhere along the way. Then Jamie was born, our little miracle, the only thing keeping me afloat. I thought maybe having a baby would change something. Maybe he'd see Jamie and some part of him would wake up, but instead he just started coming home later. Then not at all. And then one day, he came back. I remember rocking Jamie in my arms, trying to get him to sleep after feeding him. I was standing in our living room, in that brand new apartment we were now stuck paying for, the one I'd bled my savings into. Jason opened the door. I actually let myself breathe, finally. And right behind him, she walked in, a blonde, expensive coat, heels. He didn't even bother introducing her. Just dropped his keys on the table and said, "Hope you don't mind, Tiff. She's living here now." I froze. He walked right past me, past us, like we were just furniture. His girlfriend strolled through the place like she was inspecting to see if it fit her standards. She giggled. They joked. About me, in front of me. I stood there, holding my baby, trying not to suffocate. Crying or screaming wouldn't have mattered. He was enjoying every second of it. I realized then this wasn't a slip-up. It was a show, a performance. Their way of reminding me that I was no one. I called Mags. She showed up, even though her heart was already breaking, even though she was exhausted. She let loose on him, yelled at her own son, cursed herself for not stopping him when she had the chance. I'd never seen her like that before. Jason just smirked, and that girl sat on the couch, sipping wine, the same bottle I'd bought for our anniversary, murmuring, "Oh my God, you guys have such drama." Mags left with fire in her eyes. And a month later, she was gone. Her heart gave out, alone. In that empty house, no one there to even call for help. After the funeral, Jason was calm, unbothered, no tears, just kept saying how everything would be simpler now. At the meeting with the attorney, he found out all of his mom's property, the factory, her house, was his. Then he turned to me and said, "Looks like you're not needed here anymore. Pack your things and get out. Take the kid with you." I sat there, staring at nothing. I couldn't feel my legs, didn't even hear the door slam behind him. I just sat there. That's when Mr. Adams, the attorney, spoke quietly. "Mrs. Carter, I have something for you." A letter from your mother-in-law. She asked me to give it to you if anything ever happened to her. I tore the envelope open, and the moment I read the first lines, the tears wouldn't stop. Tiffany, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here. I knew my son would break you the way his father broke me, but I won't let him completely destroy your life. Mr. Adams will call you a car. You'll head to City N. There's someone there I trust with my life, and everything I left behind is yours now. Tiffany, don't go back to him. Start over, for you, for Jamie. The car pulled up 15 minutes later. I kissed my son, held him close, and without looking back, stepped out into the night. The drive to City N felt like one of those dreams where you think you've woken up, but you're still stuck somewhere between sleep and reality. I sat in the back seat, holding Jamie close to my chest. He was out cold, gently snoring, blissfully unaware that the world around us was falling apart and rebuilding itself at the same time. The driver, Tom, wasn't much of a talker, but he knew exactly where he was going. He knew why, and somehow it felt like he knew me better than I knew myself. "You're strong, miss," he said once, eyes still on the road. "Mrs. Carter talked about you a lot, said you were like a daughter to her." I clenched my jaw. Margaret? Mags? She was gone now, but she hadn't just left me with grief. She'd left a plan. A lifeline. City N welcomed us with tall pines and that crisp evergreen smell. It was a quiet, almost vacation-y suburb in Washington, where the trees hugged the roads, the houses had wrap-around porches, and kids actually played in front yards instead of dingy basements. We pulled up to this small but cozy house with a bright red front door. There was something about it, something real, like it had a pulse. Tom grabbed my bag from the trunk, refusing a single dollar. "Call me if you ever need anything, miss. I'm close by," he said. Margaret was like a sister to me. Then he drove off, leaving me there with my baby and a letter burning a hole in my heart. I raised my hand to knock. The door opened to an older man, maybe around 60. Tall, silver hair, lined face, steady eyes, and a smile that felt familiar. "Tiffany?" "Yes, I'm Frank. Frank Reynolds. Mags said one day you might show up. Come on in." I stepped inside, and it was like falling into another world. The house was warm, not from the heat, but from something deeper. Books everywhere. Framed photos, a vintage wooden dresser, a fireplace stacked with candles. It smelled like cinnamon, pine, and peace, the kind you forget exists when you've lived in survival mode too long. "You can stay here as long as you need," Frank said. "But I think you deserve more than just a place to crash." He sat me down in the kitchen and handed me a mug of coffee. It was lukewarm, but it smelled amazing. Jamie was lying peacefully in a bassinet that apparently Mags had sent ahead of time. She'd planned all of this, quietly, carefully, for us. Over coffee, Frank told me everything. About how, over the last 2 years, Margaret had started a small business in City N, a little factory that made natural soaps and handmade skincare products. He'd helped her run it. She trusted him with everything. "She didn't do it for profit," Frank said. "She did it for your future." He slid a folder across the table. Paperwork. Legal documents. The factory was now mine. A small 2-bedroom apartment near downtown? Mine too. I sat there, barely breathing. It felt like someone had finally taken the chains off, but right behind the relief came the fear. What now? I had a baby. No clue how to run a business. No idea how to start over. "You've got me," Frank said, like he could hear the storm in my head. "And you've got a team. Mags made sure of that." "Why?" I asked. It was all I could get out. "Why did she do all this?" He looked me in the eye, calm, steady. "Because she saw a daughter in you. And I see a woman who's been carrying someone else's pain for way too long. It's time you lived your life." That night, I didn't sleep. I just watched Jamie breathe, ran my fingers over his tiny hands, and asked myself, am I really, finally free? But freedom doesn't mean emptiness. It means choice, responsibility. And the next morning I woke up with one clear decision. I'm taking my name back. I'm taking my voice back. I'm divorcing Jason Carter, and I'm starting over this time. My life. My rules. Pierce County Courthouse felt like a whole different planet the moment I walked in. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something deeper. Finality. Determination. I was really doing it. I was divorcing Jason Carter. The woman at the front desk gave me a warm smile, like she'd seen hundreds of women cross the same threshold, choosing themselves for the first time in a long time. "Full name?" she asked. "Tiffany Moore." I want to go back to my maiden name. She nodded with a grin. Got it. Congrats, Miss Moore. Here's to new beginnings. I don't even know why, but those few words got me choked up. Just 2 words, but they meant everything. 2 days later, I had a court date. A real one. Judge, lawyer, Jason. Everything official. No takebacks. Frank was there through it all. Quiet, steady, never pushing. He'd drive me to the courthouse, wait in the car with Jamie while I stood in line with a stack of papers that felt heavier than they looked. He always had tea ready when I got home, emotionally wrecked. You've got color in your cheeks again, he said one day. You're starting to come back to life. I'm scared, I admitted. This is the first time I've ever done something just for me. No second guessing, no permission. Frank nodded. That's freedom. It's never easy, but it's always worth it. While the divorce was working its way through the system, I threw myself into the business. Mags had named it Northwoods Essentials, a cozy little operation tucked into a light industrial district just outside town. A warm office, 2 small production lines, all handmade. Soaps, bath bombs, lotions, all natural, 0 plastic, 0 parabens. Just heart. The staff? Mostly women, 15 of them. Single moms, survivors, scrappy and kind. It felt like Mags hadn't built a team. She built a sisterhood. She lifted up the broken. They welcomed me cautiously, not as the new boss, but more like a continuation of her. You remind me of her, said Linda, one of the employees. Quiet, strong, looks soft but steel underneath. I started learning everything I could. Nights reading up on small business management, days spent walking the floor, getting to know people, understanding every detail. Somewhere along the line, I stopped being a placeholder. I became the owner. For real. Frank would joke sometimes, you're like some movie character, from rock bottom to CEO. And I'd laugh, because for the first time in forever, I actually could. In my 4th week in town, I decided it was time to deal with the apartment. The one Jason and I bought, and he tried to claim. I found the documents, my name, my payments, my transfers. Half the down payment came from my savings. The other half? Quietly covered by Mags. Jason hadn't dropped a single dime. You should sell it, Frank said. It's not just a property. It's one of the last chains he's got around you. Cut it loose. And cut the rest of his hold with it, I nodded. I'll list it next week. Meanwhile, court confirmed the final hearing. Monday, 10 a.m. According to my lawyer, Jason wasn't thrilled. Hated that his woman filed first. Hated that I now owned something. Hated that he was still living at his mom's old house, while his new love apparently wasn't loving reality so much. Think he'll show? I asked Frank. Oh, he'll show, he said. Men like him don't walk away quietly. They want to watch the wreckage just to make sure it's theirs. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. On court day, I kept it simple but sharp. Navy blazer, crisp white blouse, hair up, minimal makeup. I walked into the courtroom and saw him, that Jason, the one I used to imagine a life with. But he looked small, lost, diminished, no girlfriend, no lawyer, just him, and whatever pride he had left. The hearing was quick, a few signatures, a couple of statements. The judge wished me well. When it ended, I reached into my bag and handed Jason an envelope. What's this? He asked, cold. Papers for the apartment. It's up for sale. I'm the sole investor. You don't live there, and you won't again. He turned red. You serious? That's my home. No, Jason. That was my prison. Now it's just real estate. Good luck finding a rental. I turned around and walked out. Frank was waiting by the car. Jamie was asleep in the back seat. And for the first time in years, I felt light. Not because I'd won, because I was finally done losing. The sale of the apartment went through fast. At the real estate agency in Tacoma, I signed the papers without feeling any regret or nostalgia. The apartment wasn't a home. It was a cage. Now, it's no more. Half of the money I got went into a marketing campaign for Northwoods Essentials. The other half went into Jamie's account, for his future. Frank just smiled when I told him about it. Meg would be proud, he said. You're not just building a business, you're building the world around you. I smiled. You know, Frank, for the first time in my life, I'm not scared to open the door in the morning. And then came the letter. The address was the factory in Tacoma. The sender's name was Jason Carter. It was short. I'm ready to sell you the factory. Price negotiable. Urgent. I don't want to go bankrupt. I laughed for about 5 minutes. Then I put the letter on the table. The same table Meg once used to plan this business. I ran my fingers along the edge and said out loud, "Oh, Jason, you don't just want to sell, you have to. And remember, you once thought I was nothing." The next day I went to Tacoma. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to close the loop. The office of my former mother-in-law was a mess. Dust, dirt, a broken light. The factory was barely running. There were almost no employees. When I walked in, he was sitting at the same desk she used to sit at. Only now, he was wearing a coffee-stained shirt, his eyes were empty and his face looked exhausted. He'd aged 2 years and 2 months. "You alone?" he asked. "That's enough for me," he scoffed. "So, business lady, here to take it all?" "No," I sat down across from him, steady, confident. "I came to buy, at a price I'll set," he grimaced. "You don't have the right to dictate. I have the right to choose. You wrote it yourself. Sell or bankrupt. You lost, Jason. And it's not about the money, Kat. It's about the fact that power always mattered to you, and freedom mattered to me." He was quiet for a moment. Then he whispered, "She loved you more than she loved me. Because I respected her. You thought she was just some old, stupid obstacle. Well, now you're sitting in this office, but there's nothing here. No people, no ideas, no love, just echoes." He lowered his gaze. "The deal went through. For pennies. I bought everything, the building, the production line. I kept the staff that was still around. Announced a restructuring, and deep down I realized this wasn't revenge. This was restoring balance." When I stepped outside, there was a woman standing there, probably in her 30s, wearing a worn-out jacket with a clear line of pain across her face. I recognized her. It was Amber, Jason's mistress. "Tiffany," she spoke first. "Amber. He ruined everything. I didn't know he was like that." "I knew, but you didn't believe it." She looked away. "I'm sorry." "I'm not. Everyone gets what they deserve." I handed her a business card. "We've got a factory in City N. We need workers, and people with a story there. That's not a curse, it's experience." She took the card. Her fingers were shaking. "Thank you." It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about closing the loop. I got home late that night. Frank was waiting for me at the door with a cup of tea and the words, "You're fire. But not the kind that burns, the kind that warms." That night, I fell asleep next to Jamie, holding his hand. He was smiling in his sleep. And I realized we'd started a new cycle, where my story no longer begins with pain, but continues with choice. 2 months had passed since I bought the factory in Tacoma. On paper, I'm the owner of 2 businesses. In real life, I'm a woman who can finally breathe easy. Every morning started with a routine: coffee, breakfast for Jamie, a quick call to Frank, and then heading to one of the factories. Sometimes I'd go to City N, other times Tacoma. I alternated weeks, building a bridge between the past and the future. Northwood's Essentials started thriving. We launched an online store, added new products: soy wax candles, unscented skincare for sensitive skin, self-care kits. Each kit was packed by hand with a card that said, "You are worthy. You are strong. You are not alone." That phrase became our motto. The Tacoma factory needed more work. The team had to be almost completely rebuilt. A lot of people left when Jason did. But I focused on women who'd found themselves in tough spots: single moms, survivors of abuse, immigrants with basic English but golden hands. It wasn't about business. It was about rebuilding. "You didn't just save yourself," Marissa, one of the new employees, said one day. "You opened the door for others." And I realized she was right. On the inner wall of the new office, I hung a big board. Above it, a sign, "Second Chance Wall." Each woman wrote on a sticky note what she'd overcome: survived a divorce, beaten depression, ran away with my kid from an abuser. I added my own sticky note too: was a shadow, became the light. I didn't talk to Jason again. He disappeared off the radar. Rumor had it he moved to another state. And honestly, I didn't care anymore. Frank became more than just a friend. He was my partner, my support, the voice of reason when I started doubting myself. We worked on logistics together, opened new sales channels, even went to a trade show in Seattle. One evening, when Jamie was asleep on his couch, I stayed for a cup of tea. We sat on the porch, the wind rustling the trees. "I'm scared," I said. "Of what?" "That everything is too good, that I could lose it all again." He looked at me carefully. "Loss is part of the journey, but you're different now. You won't fall as low as you did before, because now you know how to get back up." I lowered my head. "Sometimes I feel like I'm just really good at pretending to be strong." Frank took my hand. Tiffany, you're not pretending. You are strong. And it's not about the factory, the papers, or the courts. You're strong because after the hell, you chose to build heaven. I looked at him. There was no pity in his eyes, just respect, and something warm, too warm to ignore. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time I wasn't scared of it. That night I wrote in my journal, I used to think I had to be the perfect wife, then the perfect mom. Now I get it. I just need to be a whole woman. Everything else will fall into place. It's been exactly a year since I walked out of the notary office in Tacoma, with a baby in my arms and a letter that changed my life forever. A lot's changed since then. But the biggest change? Me. The factory in City N didn't just become successful, it made it into the top 10 small businesses according to Northwest Business Review. We opened a new workshop, hired 20 more women. I knew each one by name, knew their stories, and each of them called me an inspiration. Though, to be honest, they were the ones inspiring me. With their resilience, with their belief in second chances, in people, in themselves. Jamie started daycare. Every night he'd bring me his drawings, yellow suns, blue houses, and stick figures that looked like me and him. Sometimes there was a figure older than us, with gray hair. "Is that Meg?" I'd ask. "That's Grandpa Frank," he'd proudly say. And my heart would ache. In the best possible way. With Frank, everything felt natural. No rush, no grand declarations. We didn't call it a relationship, but it was. He was there. He respected my space, never rushed me. One day he said, "Love isn't a storm, it's a harbor." And I realized I'd found mine. But the real closure came on the anniversary of Meg's death. Jamie and I went to her grave. I left a bunch of lavender, the same one that started it all. Frank stood a little off to the side, giving me space. "I know you can't hear me," I said, kneeling down. "But maybe you feel me. You saved me, Meg. Not just with money, not just with that letter, but with your belief. You just believed." I paused, then added, "I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a woman who can protect herself, and my son." I stood up. Tears rolled down my cheeks. But they weren't the same kind of tears. Not from pain, but from the fullness of life. That evening we had a small dinner at home. It was all of us, me, Jamie, Frank, and a few employees I now called friends. We sat on the porch, ate homemade pie, and listened as Jamie told his version of the Three Bears story, where Mama Bear was the CEO, and Baby Bear was the director of toys. Frank raised his glass of cider. To those who made it, to those who hit rock bottom but chose to keep swimming. Everyone raised their glasses. I looked at them, and I realized this was my happy ending. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had become real. I used to think the end was the period. Turns out it's the gate, where life begins, the real one, mine.